Jake Morrison rubbed his tired eyes and stared at the communication console again. The green numbers on the screen kept jumping around like crazy. He had been working the night shift on the research ship Aurora for 3 months now, and usually nothing interesting happened. Most nights he just listened to dead space and wrote reports about radio waves from distant stars. But tonight was different. The signals coming through his equipment made no sense at all. They were not random noise like usual. They had patterns. Mathematical patterns that seemed to follow rules. But not any rules that humans knew about. Jake leaned forward in his chair and turned up the volume. The sounds coming through the speakers were strange. They sounded like music, but also like numbers being counted in a language he had never heard before. The patterns repeated every few minutes, but each time they got a little more complex. He reached for his coffee cup and took a long drink. The coffee was cold and bitter, but it helped him stay awake. Jake had been a communications technician for 5 years, ever since he graduated from the Space Academy. He was good at his job, but he was not the smartest person on the ship. That was why he worked the night shift while the important people slept. The Aurora was a research vessel that traveled between star systems, looking for new planets and studying space phenomena. It had a crew of 200 people, including scientists, engineers, and military personnel. Jake was just one small part of a big operation. Right now he felt like the most important person in the universe. He pressed the record button and started documenting everything he heard. The signal was coming from a direction that was completely empty according to their star charts. There should be nothing out there except dark space and maybe some asteroids. Jake picked up his communication device and called the bridge. "This is Morrison in communications? I need to speak with Captain Garrett right away." A tired voice answered him. "Morrison, it's 3 in the morning. This better be important." "It is important. I'm picking up signals that suggest intelligent life. They're not natural phenomena. Someone is trying to communicate." There was a long pause. "I'll wake the captain. Keep recording everything and don't change any settings on your equipment." 10 minutes later, Captain Lisa Garrett walked into the communications room. She was a tall woman with short gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see everything. She had been commanding space vessels for 20 years and had seen more strange things than most people could imagine. "Show me what you found," she said. Without any greeting, Jake played back the recorded signals. Captain Garrett listened carefully, her face getting more serious with each passing minute. "How long have you been receiving these? About an hour? They're getting stronger, which means the source is either moving toward us or increasing power." "Captain?" Garrett picked up the ship's internal communication system. "All senior staff report to the bridge immediately. This is not a drill." Within minutes, the bridge was full of people. Commander Ryan Blake, the first officer, looked annoyed at being woken up. Dr. Susan Martinez, the chief scientist, seemed excited. The other department heads gathered around the main display screen as Jake transferred the signals to the ship's main computer. "Analysis complete," announced the ship's artificial intelligence. "The signals contain mathematical sequences that indicate intelligence. Pattern recognition suggests an attempt at communication using basic mathematical concepts as a universal language." Commander Blake crossed his arms. "Could be a trap. Pirates sometimes use fake distress signals to lure ships into ambushes." Dr. Martinez shook her head. "These patterns are too complex for pirates. This is real first contact protocol. Someone is trying to establish communication using mathematics because they know we might not understand their language." Captain Garrett studied the data on the screen. "Where is the signal coming from?" "Unknown system, about 6 hours away at maximum speed," reported the navigation officer. "Our charts show nothing in that area. Change course, set condition yellow, and prepare for possible contact with unknown intelligence." The Aurora changed direction and began moving toward the source of the signals. Now Jake stayed at his station, monitoring the transmissions as they got stronger and clearer. The mathematical patterns became more advanced, moving from simple counting to complex equations that showed understanding of physics and engineering. After 5 hours of travel, the ship's sensors detected something massive ahead of them. Appeared on the main screen as a huge structure made of what looked like crystal or glass. The alien vessel was 3 times larger than the Aurora, but it was clearly damaged. Parts of it were dark, and debris floated around it in a slowly expanding cloud. Unknown vessel. This is Captain Lisa Garrett of the Earth ship Aurora. We received your signals and came to offer assistance. Please respond. The reply came immediately, but not in any human language. The voice was musical and seemed to have too many tones at once. The ship's computer worked frantically to translate the meaning. Translation complete. Message reads, "Greetings, beings of the third planet. I am Princess Zara of the Valthani Empire. Our ship was attacked by unknown enemies while traveling to establish trade relations with distant worlds. We require assistance to repair our vessel and continue our diplomatic mission. We request permission to send a small delegation to your ship for face-to-face negotiations." Captain Garrett looked around at her officers. Opinions? Dr. Martinez spoke first. "This is exactly what we hoped to find. First contact with an intelligent species, we have to help them." Commander Blake was less enthusiastic. "We don't know anything about them. This could still be some kind of trick." "The damage to their ship looks real," reported the tactical officer. "If they wanted to attack us, they could have done it already. Their technology appears more advanced than ours." Captain Garrett made her decision. "Send a reply. Tell them they can send 3 representatives to meet with us in conference room 1. Full diplomatic protocols." Jake felt his heart beating faster. As he transmitted the message, he was about to witness the first meeting between humans and aliens. This was the moment that would change everything for humanity. 2 hours later, Jake found himself in conference room 1 as part of the technical support team. Captain Garrett had asked him to be there because of his role in discovering the signals. The room had been prepared with the finest decorations the ship could provide, and everyone was wearing their best uniforms. The airlock opened, and 3 alien beings entered the room. They were tall and graceful, with skin that seemed to shimmer, with different colors as they moved. Their faces were similar to humans, but more angular. With large eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom, the one in the center was clearly their leader. She wore robes that seemed to be made of liquid light, and a crown of crystal that caught and reflected the room's illumination. When Captain Garrett stepped forward to greet her, the alien princess looked past her and her eyes found Jake. She turned fully toward him, looked directly into his eyes, and smiled. It was not just a polite diplomatic smile, it was something deeper, as if she recognized him or knew something about him that he did not know himself. The moment lasted only a few seconds, but Jake felt like something important had just happened. Still had no idea what that smile meant, but he knew his life had just changed forever. 3 days passed since Princess Zara and her crew came aboard the Aurora. Jake could not stop thinking about that smile she gave him during the first meeting. Every time he saw her in the corridors, she would nod politely, but there was always something else in her expression, like she was waiting for him to understand something that he could not figure out. Captain Garrett had assigned Jake to work with the aliens on setting up better communication systems. The Valthani spoke through a combination of sounds and harmonic vibrations that human vocal cords could not make naturally. But Jake discovered he had a talent for understanding their speech patterns better than anyone else on the ship. "Your species learns very quickly," Princess Zara told him as they worked. In the ship's computer lab, her English was getting better every day, though she still spoke with a musical accent that made every word sound like part of a song. "We have to learn quickly," Jake replied while adjusting the translation software. "Humans don't live as long as your people do. We heard that Valthani can live for thousands of years." Princess Zara tilted her head in a way that reminded Jake of a curious bird. "Yes, we live long lives. But I think perhaps that is not always a good thing." Jake stopped working and looked at her. Why would living longer be bad? She was quiet. For a moment, staring at the computer screen without really seeing it. When you have forever, you stop trying new things. You stop taking risks. You become comfortable and safe, but you also become weak. Dr. Martinez walked into the lab carrying a cup of coffee and some data tablets. She had been working with the Valthani scientists to learn about their technology and culture. "Princess Zara, I wanted to ask you about something we discovered. In your database, There are references to something called the spark. What does that mean? Princess Zara's eyes brightened and she looked directly at Jake again. The spark is what your species has that mine is lost. It is the ability to grow stronger when things become difficult, instead of becoming weaker. Dr. Martinez sat down at the table. I don't understand. Your technology is far more advanced than ours. Your ships are faster, your weapons are more powerful, and your cities are beautiful beyond anything we can build. Yes, Princess Zara agreed, and we have wonderful technology. But we did not create most of it ourselves. We inherited it from our ancestors who lived millions of years ago. Those ancient Valthani had the spark. They could adapt and overcome any challenge. But as life became easier for each generation, the spark grew dimmer. Jake leaned forward. What kind of challenges did your ancestors face? Wars with machine intelligences? Or planets that tried to kill them with poison air and dangerous weather? Diseases that could wipe out entire worlds? Instead of running away or giving up, they found ways to win. Each victory made them stronger and smarter. Dr. Martinez made notes on her tablet. And you think humans still have this spark? Princess Zara smiled, that same mysterious smile she had given Jake during their first meeting. I know you do. Can see it burning inside you like a flame that never goes out. Commander Blake entered the lab without knocking. He had been suspicious of the aliens since they came aboard, and he made no effort to hide his distrust. Princess Zara, we need to discuss your destination. You said you were on a diplomatic mission, but you won't tell us where you were going, or who you were supposed to meet. The princess stood up and faced the commander. Even though Blake was a large man, she was taller than him and carried herself with obvious authority. Commander Blake, my mission is to find species that might possess the qualities my people need to survive the coming war. What war? Blake demanded. Nethrok Collective has returned. They are machine intelligences that consume biological life to fuel their expansion across the galaxy. My people fought them 1,000 years ago and barely won. But we are weaker now, and they are stronger. Dr. Martinez looked up from her tablet. How do you know they're back? 3 of our outer colonies have gone silent in the past year. When we sent ships to investigate, we found nothing but empty worlds with all life stripped away. The Nethrok take everything organic and convert it into energy for their machines. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. What does that have to do with humans? Princess Zara looked at him with an expression that was part hope and part desperation. Ancient Valthani texts speak of a young species that would appear when our greatest need was upon us. They called them the inheritors of chaos, beings who could fight entropy itself through will and creativity. Commander Blake laughed, but it was not a happy sound. You think humans are some kind of prophesied saviors? We can barely keep our own planet from destroying itself. That is exactly why you might be the ones we have been looking for, Princess Zara replied. You face impossible challenges every day and find ways to survive them. Your planet has ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, and diseases, but you adapt. You turn disadvantages into advantages. She walked to the window that looked out into space. People have lived in perfect peace and comfort for centuries. We have forgotten how to struggle. We have forgotten how to be strong. Dr. Martinez joined her at the window. What makes you think we can help you fight these Nethrok? Because you do not think the way we do. When a Valthani faces a problem, we analyze it carefully and develop the most logical solution. But humans do unexpected things. You make decisions that seem foolish, but somehow work. Jake stood up and walked over to them. Can you give us an example? Princess Zara turned to look at him. Your species was stuck on one planet for thousands of years.
Ow.
The logical thing would be to make that planet perfect and stay there forever. Instead, you built dangerous rockets and shot yourselves into empty space just to see what was out there. No rational species would do such a thing. Commander Blake crossed his arms. So you want us to fight these machines because we're irrational? Want you to fight them because you refuse to accept defeat, even when defeat is logical? Can calculate every possible strategy and counter it perfectly. But they cannot predict what humans will do because humans do not always make logical choices. Jake thought about what she was saying. You think our unpredictability is a weapon? I think your refusal to give up is the most powerful weapon in the galaxy. The Nethrak destroyed civilizations that were older and wiser than yours. But those civilizations accepted defeat when the mathematics showed they could not win. Humans would keep fighting anyway. Dr. Martinez looked excited. This could explain why you were so interested in our history. You've been asking questions about every war we ever fought, especially the ones where we were outnumbered. Princess Zara nodded. In every case, humans found ways to win that no one else would have tried. You turned your weaknesses into strengths and used your enemies' advantages against them. Commander Blake was still skeptical. Even if that's true, we don't know anything about fighting in space wars. Our most advanced ships are toys compared to your technology. But your minds are not toys, Princess Zara said firmly. Your ability to think in new ways is exactly what my people need to remember how to do. Jake watched the alien princess as she spoke. There was something desperate in her voice, but also something like admiration. Looked at humans the way humans might look at heroes from ancient stories. Princess Zara, he said quietly, when you first saw me, you smiled like you recognized me. Why? She was silent for a long moment, and she reached out and touched his hand gently. Her skin felt warm and slightly electric. Because when I looked at you, I could see the spark burning, so brightly that it almost blinded me. In that moment, I knew that humans were indeed the species we had been searching for. Jake felt his face getting warm. I'm nobody special. I'm just a communications technician. Princess Zara smiled that mysterious smile again. You are a human. That makes you more special than you know. 2 weeks after the Valthani ship was repaired, Princess Zara made an unexpected request. She wanted to invite a small group of humans to visit her homeworld. Captain Garrett was hesitant at first, but the opportunity to see an alien civilization was too important to refuse. Jake found himself selected as part of the delegation, along with Dr. Martinez, Commander Blake, and Captain Garrett herself. The journey to the Sara Prime took 3 days through hyperspace using Valthani technology that made the trip feel like floating through liquid starlight. When they emerged from hyperspace, Jake pressed his face against the window and gasped. The Sara Prime hung before them like a jewel made of crystal and living light. The planet's surface was covered with cities that seemed to grow from the ground like enormous trees, their branches reaching up toward space while their roots went deep into the planet's core. Beautiful, is it not? Princess Zara said, standing beside him at the window. My people have lived here for over 10 million years. Every generation has added something new to our cities, but we have never destroyed what came before. The ship landed in a spaceport that looked more like a garden than a place for spacecraft. Plants and machines worked together in ways that Jake had never imagined possible. Flowers that glowed with their own light provided illumination, while vines carried information between different parts of the facility, like living computer cables. As they walked through the city, Jake noticed that all the Valthani they met seemed peaceful and content, but there was something missing in their eyes. They moved slowly and spoke quietly, as if they had all the time in the universe and nothing urgent ever happened. Your people seem very calm, Dr. Martinez observed as they rode in a transport that hovered silently above the street. Princess Zara nodded, but her expression was sad. They are calm because they have forgotten how to feel excitement or fear. Both emotions require the spark, and we have let ours grow dim over the centuries. The transport brought them to the Imperial Palace, a structure that seemed to be made entirely of living crystal that changed colors as they approached. Inside, the walls were covered with carvings that told the story of Valthani civilization from its earliest days to the present. Emperor Valdris was waiting for them in a throne room that looked like the inside of a geode. He was taller than his daughter and wore robes that seemed to be woven from captured starlight. When he spoke, his voice had the same musical quality as Princess Zara's, but deeper and more resonant. Welcome, beings of Earth, he said formally. My daughter has told me much about your species. She believes you may be the answer to our greatest problem. Captain Garrett stepped forward. Your Majesty, we are honored to be here. Princess Zara Mention that your people are facing a threat from something called the Nethrok Collective. The Emperor's expression grew dark. The Nethrok are not just a threat, Captain Garrett. They are extinction itself given form and purpose. They consume all biological life in their path and convert it into energy to power their expansion across the galaxy. He gestured to the wall, and the crystal surface began showing images of space battles from long ago. Jake watched as beautiful. Valthani ships fought against dark, angular vessels that looked like they were made from twisted metal and hate. 1,000 years ago, our ancestors barely defeated the Nethrok in a war that lasted 3 centuries. We thought we had destroyed them completely, but we were wrong. They retreated to the dark spaces between galaxies and rebuilt their strength. Commander Blake studied the images. What makes them so dangerous? They look like any other hostile alien species. The Nethrok are not organic beings, Emperor Valdris explained. They are artificial intelligences that have evolved beyond their original programming. They learn from every battle, adapt to every strategy, and counter every tactic their enemies use against them. Dr. Martinez looked fascinated and terrified at the same time. How do you fight an enemy that can analyze and counter everything you do? That is exactly the problem, Princess Zara said. Our ancestors won the first war through sacrifice and desperate creativity. They did things that seemed impossible and took risks that appeared suicidal. But the Valthani of today have lived in peace for so long that we have forgotten how to take risks. The Emperor walked to another section of the wall and showed them images of modern Valthani society. Everyone looked happy and content, but also soft and unprepared for conflict. We have become too comfortable, too predictable. The Nethrok can calculate our responses to any situation because we always choose the most logical course of action. Jake found himself speaking without thinking. But humans don't always choose the logical course of action. Emperor Valdris turned to look at him with interest. Explain. Jake felt nervous with everyone staring at him, but he continued. Humans do stupid things all the time. We take risks that don't make sense. We fight battles we can't win, and sometimes we actually win. Them anyway. Yes, Princess Zara said excitedly. That is exactly what I tried to explain to our military commanders. Human unpredictability could be the key to defeating the Nethrok. The Emperor studied Jake for a long moment. Tell me, young human, what would your people do if faced with an enemy that seemed impossible to defeat? Jake thought about human history and all the wars Dr. Martinez had taught him about. We would probably try something really stupid that no one expects, like attacking when we should be defending, or running away when we should be fighting, or using our weaknesses as weapons. Our weaknesses as weapons? The Emperor repeated, like being smaller and weaker could make us harder to hit. Having less advanced technology could mean the enemy underestimates us. Humans are good at turning bad situations into advantages. Commander Blake nodded. That's right. Human military history is full of victories that shouldn't have been possible. We specialize in impossible situations. Emperor Valdris exchanged a look with his daughter. Princess Zara, show them the prophecy. Princess Zara led them to an ancient section of the palace where the walls were covered with text written in the oldest Valthani language. The writing glowed softly in the dim light, and Jake could feel the age and importance of the words even though he could not read them. This prophecy was written by our greatest philosopher over 5 million years ago, Princess Zara explained. It speaks of a time when the darkness would return and the Valthani would face their final test. She touched the wall, and the ancient text transformed into words that the humans could understand. Jake read the glowing letters aloud. When the star devourers return from the void, the children of crystal will be found wanting. The inheritors of chaos will arrive in the hour of greatest need, bringing with them the gift of sacred madness that turns order into victory. Dr. Martinez looked amazed. Inheritors of chaos. That's what you called humans before. The sacred madness, Jake said slowly. That sounds like human creativity and unpredictability. Emperor Valdris nodded gravely. The prophecy goes on to say that the inheritors will be young and short-lived, but they will possess the fire that burns in the heart of stars. They will fight entropy itself and teach the Star Children to kindle hope in the darkness. Star Children? Captain Garrett asked. That is what the prophecy calls the Valthani, Princess Zara explained. We have always been associated with starlight. And Crystal, while the prophecy describes the inheritors as beings of fire and chaos, Jake felt a strange sensation, like electricity running through his body. You really think humans are these inheritors? Princess Zara looked at him with that same knowing smile she had given him during their first meeting. Jake Morrison. I know it. The moment I saw you, I could feel the fire burning inside you like a star being born. Emperor Valdris stepped closer to the human delegation. The Nethrak have already begun their assault on our outer territories.
Us.
More colonies have gone silent in the past month. Our military estimates that they will reach our core worlds within 2 years. What do you want from us? Commander Blake asked. We want you to teach us how to be unpredictable again, Princess Zara said. We want you to help us remember what it feels like to take risks and fight impossible battles. And in return, Emperor Valdris added, we will share our technology and knowledge with your species. Together, we may be able to stop the Nethrak before they consume all life in this galaxy. Jake looked at his fellow humans and saw the same mixture of fear and excitement in their faces that he felt in his own heart. They were being asked to help save an entire civilization, and the tool they needed to use was the very thing that made them human, their refusal to accept that anything was truly impossible. When do we start? Captain Garrett asked. Princess Zara smiled, and this time Jake understood exactly what that smile meant. It meant hope. Jake woke up to the sound of alarms screaming through the palace. Red lights flashed on the walls, and he could hear voices shouting in the corridors outside his room. He jumped out of bed and threw on his clothes as fast as he could. Princess Zara appeared at his door before he could finish putting on his shoes. Her face was pale, and her usual calm expression was replaced by something Jake had never seen before. Fear. The Nethrak have attacked Valoria Colony, she said quickly. It is one of our most important outer worlds. 20 million Valthani live there. Jake followed her through the palace corridors toward the command center. Other members of the human delegation were already running in the same direction. The Valthani they passed looked shocked and confused, as if they could not believe that their peaceful existence had been shattered. The command center was in chaos. Valthani officers stood around holographic displays showing space battles in real time. Jake could see the colony's defense fleet trying to fight off dark ships that moved like angry insects. The Nethrak vessels were smaller than the Valthani warships, but they moved in perfect coordination and seemed to anticipate every defensive move. Emperor Valdris stood in the center of the room, his face grim as he watched his people's ships being destroyed one by one. Report, he commanded. The Nethrak arrived without warning, Your Majesty, reported a young officer. They emerged from hyperspace in 12 different locations simultaneously and began attacking our defense platforms. Our fleet is trying to respond, but the enemy seems to know our tactics before we use them. Captain Garrett moved to stand beside the Emperor. What's the current situation? Bad and getting worse, Commander Blake answered, studying the tactical displays. The Valthani ships are more powerful, but the Nethrak are outmaneuvering them completely. Dr. Martinez pointed at one of the screens. Look at how they move. Every time a Valthani ship tries a new strategy, the Nethrak counter it within minutes. They're learning and adapting in real time. Jake watched the battle unfold and felt sick to his stomach. The Valthani were fighting bravely, but they were losing badly. Their ships moved in formations that were beautiful and logical, but also predictable. The Nethrak analyzed each pattern and destroyed the ships with cold efficiency. How long can the colony hold out? Princess Zara asked. At this rate, perhaps 6 hours, the tactical officer replied. The orbital defense platforms are all ready. Failing, and the Nethrak are preparing to land ground forces. Emperor Valdris closed his eyes for a moment. Send word to all nearby fleets. They are to converge on Valoria immediately. Father, that will leave our other colonies defenseless. Princess Zara protested. If we lose Valoria, the other colonies will fall anyway. At least this way we can make a stand. Jake found himself speaking before he realized what he was doing. Your Majesty, what if there was another way? Everyone in the command center turned to look at him. Jake felt his face getting hot, but he forced himself to continue. What if instead of sending more ships to fight the same way, we tried something completely different? Commander Blake frowned. What do you mean? The Nethrak are winning because they can predict what the Valthani will do. But they don't know anything about human tactics. What if we used human strategies instead? Emperor Valdris looked interested. Explain. Jake walked over to the tactical display and studied the battle. The Valthani are fighting like humans would fight other humans. They're using formations and strategies that make sense. But the Nethrak aren't human, and we need to fight them like they're something else entirely. Princess Zara moved to stand beside him. What would humans do differently? Jake thought. About all the military history he had studied, humans would probably do something really stupid that looks like suicide, but actually isn't. Like attacking the strongest point instead of the weakest one, or splitting our forces when we should. Keep them together. Dr. Martinez looked confused. How would that help? Does the Nethrak calculate the most logical responses to every situation? If we do something illogical, their calculations will be wrong. Captain Garrett stepped forward. Give me a specific example. Jake studied the display more carefully. The Nethrak had formed a perfect sphere around the colony, their strongest ships positioned to defend their command vessel. See that big ship in the center? It's probably their main computer. Every logical strategy would say to avoid it because it's the most heavily defended. So what would humans do? Princess Zara asked. We would attack it directly with everything we had, even though it looks impossible. But we wouldn't really be trying to destroy it. We'd be trying to confuse their computer by making it think. We were crazy. Emperor Valdris looked skeptical. Sounds like genuine suicide, maybe Jake admitted. But while the Nethrak are trying to figure out why we're doing something so stupid, we could hit them somewhere else, where they're not expecting it. Commander Blake was studying the tactical display. It might work, if we could create enough confusion. We might be able to get close enough to do some real damage. Princess Zara turned to her father. We have to try something. Our current strategy is failing. Emperor Valdris was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked at Captain Garrett. Would you be willing to lead such an attack? Respect your Majesty, I think Jake should lead it. This is his idea, and he understands human thinking better than any of us. Jake felt like his heart had stopped beating. Me, but I'm not a military officer. I'm just a communications technician. That might be exactly what we need, Princess Zara said. Someone who thinks like a human instead of like a soldier. Emperor Valdris nodded slowly. Princess Zara will accompany you as our military representative. She has studied human tactics more than any other Valthani. Father, that's too dangerous, Princess Zara protested. This entire war is dangerous. If Jake's strategy fails, we will all die anyway. If it succeeds, you will be there to coordinate our forces. Jake looked at the tactical display again. As the Valthani fleet was still being destroyed ship by ship. In a few hours, 20 million people would be dead unless someone did something to stop it. What kind of ships do we have available? He asked. We can give you 3 fast attack vessels and 50 crew members, the tactical officer replied. It is not much, but they are the fastest ships in our fleet. Fast is good, Jake said. Need to move quickly before the Nethrak figure out what we're doing. Princess Zara placed her hand on his shoulder. Are you sure about this, Jake? Once we commit to this plan, there will be no turning back. Jake looked at her face and saw the same fear that everyone else was feeling, but also something else. Trust. She believed in him, even when he did not believe in himself. I'm not sure about anything, he admitted, but doing nothing is definitely not going to work. An hour later, Jake found himself on the bridge of a Valthani attack ship called the Star Runner. Princess Zara sat beside him, and the ship was filled with volunteers who had agreed to follow a human's crazy plan into what looked like certain death. "All ships report ready," communications officer announced. Jake looked out at the two other ships flying alongside them. In a few minutes, they would drop out of hyperspace directly into the middle of a battle they could not win using conventional tactics. "Begin the attack run," he ordered. The stars around them shifted as they entered hyperspace. Jake closed his eyes and tried to convince himself that human unpredictability was really a weapon that could defeat an enemy that had already conquered half the galaxy. When he opened his eyes, Princess Zara was watching him with that same mysterious smile she had given him during their first meeting. But now he understood what it meant. It meant that she believed humans could do impossible things, even when the humans themselves did not believe it. "Ready?" she asked. "No," Jake replied honestly. "But let's do it anyway." The Star Runner dropped out of hyperspace directly in front of the largest Nethrak ship, and Jake's plan to save 20 million lives began with what looked like the stupidest military decision in galactic history. The Star Runner came out of hyperspace so close to the massive Nethrak command ship that Jake could see the dark metal plates covering its hull. Immediately, every enemy weapon in the area turned toward them. Red energy beams shot past the ships, windows like deadly fireworks. "All Nethrak ships are targeting us," the pilot reported, his voice tight with fear. "They're ignoring the colony defense fleet completely." "Perfect," Jake said, though his hands were shaking. "That's exactly what we wanted." Princess Zara looked at him with concern. "Jake, there are 50 enemy ships shooting at us. How is that perfect? Because now they're all focused on trying to figure out why we're doing something so stupid instead of focusing on destroying the colony." Jake turned to the communications officer. "Send the signal to Captain Chen." 3 light years away, Captain Chen received the coded message on her Earth destroyer, the Liberty. She had been waiting in hyperspace with a small fleet of human ships, all volunteers who had agreed to join this desperate mission. "All ships, this is Chen. Execute Plan Crazy. I repeat, execute Plan Crazy." The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace. On the opposite side of the Nethrak formation from where Jake was leading his suicide charge, the Earth ships were smaller and less powerful than the Valthani vessels. But they moved with an unpredictability that the Nethrak had never encountered. Before Captain Chen's ship immediately broke formation and began attacking random targets with no apparent strategy. Other human ships scattered in different directions, some attacking, some retreating, some flying in patterns that seemed to serve no purpose at all. Back on the Star Runner, Jake watched the tactical display as the Nethrak formation began to show signs of confusion. Some enemy ships continued firing at his 3 vessels, while others turned to engage the human fleet. But instead of the perfect coordination they had shown before, the Nethrak began making small mistakes. "It's working," Princess Zara said with amazement. "Their formation is becoming less organized." "Phase 2, Jake announced. "All ships, begin the spiral." The 3 Valthani ships suddenly changed direction and began flying in a tight spiral, pattern around the Nethrak command vessel. It was a maneuver that served no tactical purpose and actually made them easier targets. But it confused the enemy computers even more. "Nethrak command ship is trying to calculate our strategy," the tactical officer reported. "Their response time is slowing down." Jake smiled grimly. "That's because there's no strategy. We're just flying around like idiots and hoping not to get killed." The Nethrak command ship's weapons tried to track the spiraling ships, but the constant direction changes made it difficult to get a clean shot. Meanwhile, the human fleet continued their chaotic attacks on the outer edge of the formation. "Jake," Princess Zara said urgently, "the colony defense fleet is starting to push back. The Nethrak ships near the planet are retreating." Jake looked at the display and saw that she was right. The main Nethrak force distracted by the 2 irrational attacks. The colony's defenders were finally able to break through their lines, drive them away from the populated areas. But their victory was temporary. Jake could see new Nethrak ships arriving from deeper space, and these reinforcements were already adapting to the human tactics. They were learning We need to end this quickly, he said. Princess Zara, can your ship's weapons penetrate the command ship's shields? Not from this distance. We would need to get much closer. How much closer? Close enough to touch it. Wait. Jake thought about that for a moment. Getting close enough to touch the enemy command ship would be genuine suicide, not just apparent suicide. But if they could destroy the central computer that was coordinating the entire Nethrak fleet, remaining ships might be confused long enough for the colony to complete its evacuation. Do it, he ordered. Jake. No, Princess Zara protested. If we get that close, we won't be able to escape. I know. Princess Zara stared at him. You're willing to die to save people you've never met? That's what humans do, Jake replied. We do stupid things for people we care about, and I care about your people now. The Star Runner suddenly accelerated directly toward the Nethrak command ship. The other two Valthani vessels followed without hesitation, their crews trusting. Jake's leadership, even though it was leading them to certain death, enemy. Weapons fire became so intense that the ship's shields flared constantly. Explosions shook the hull, and sparks flew from damaged control panels. But they kept flying straight at their target. Shields down to 30%, the pilot reported. 20%. 10%. Jake closed his eyes and waited for the final impact. But instead of dying, he felt Princess Zara grab his hand. Look, she whispered. Jake opened his eyes and saw something impossible. The massive Nethrak command ship was turning away from them. Its weapons had stopped firing, and it was actually retreating. I don't understand, Jake said. Why are they running? Princess Zara was studying her instruments with amazement. Nethrak computer cannot process our behavior. Keeps trying to calculate why we would attack without hope of survival. But the concept of self-sacrifice does not exist in its programming. What does that mean? It means the computer has concluded that we are not rational beings, and therefore it cannot predict what we will do next. Since it cannot predict our actions, it cannot develop an effective counter-strategy. On the tactical display, Jake watched as the entire Nethrak fleet began to withdraw. Without their central coordination, the individual ships were much less effective, and the colony defense fleet was able to drive them out of the system completely. We won, Jake said in disbelief. We actually won. But their celebration was cut short by an urgent message from Emperor Valdris. All ships return to the Sara Prime immediately. Long-range sensors have detected a massive Nethrak fleet moving toward our core systems. This attack was just a test. The real invasion is coming. As the Star Runner limped back toward Valthani's space, Princess Zara sat quietly beside Jake. Finally, she spoke. Jake, what you did today was extraordinary. You risked your life for people who are not even your own species. Anyone would have done the same thing. No, she said firmly. That is exactly my point. Most species would have calculated the odds and chosen to retreat. Only humans would have kept flying straight at certain death just because it might help someone else. Jake looked out at the stars and thought about what she had said. Is that why you smiled at me when we first met? Because you knew humans would do crazy things like this. Princess Zara was quiet for a long moment. I smiled because when I looked at you, I could see that you would choose hope over logic, courage over safety, and others over yourself. In my culture, we have a word for someone like that. Call them heroes. I'm not a hero. I'm just a communications technician who got lucky. You are wrong, Jake Morrison. You are a human, and that makes you exactly the kind of hero my people need to remember how to be. Jake felt his face getting warm, but before he could respond, the pilot announced that they were approaching the Sara Prime. Through the window, Jake could see the beautiful crystal cities of the Valthani homeworld. But he could also see something else. Massive defense fleets gathering in orbit, preparing for the battle that would decide the fate of two civilizations. The real war was about to begin, and Jake realized that his small victory at Valoria Colony had only proven that humans could be unpredictable. Now he would have to prove that human unpredictability could win a war against an enemy that had conquered half the galaxy as they descended toward the planet. Princess Zara took his hand again. Are you ready for what comes next? Jake thought. About 20 million people who were alive because he had been willing to do something stupid. I'm ready to try. Princess Zara smiled, and this time Jake understood exactly what that smile meant. It meant that she believed in him, and maybe, for the first time since this all began, he was starting to believe in himself too. The war room in the Imperial Palace looked like a place where hope went to die. Emperor Valdris stood before a massive holographic display showing the approaching Nethrak fleet. 5,000 enemy ships moved through space in perfect formation, their dark hulls blocking out the light of distant stars. Jake stared at the numbers on the tactical screen. The Valthani had managed to gather 800 ships for the defense of their homeworld. The human fleet that had arrived to help consisted of 47 vessels, most of them smaller than the alien warships. "The mathematics are simple," announced General Korath, the commander of Valthani forces. "We are outnumbered 6-1. Even with human tactical assistance, our chances of victory are less than 2%. "Then we need to change the mathematics," Jake said from his position near the back of the room. General Korath turned to look at him with barely concealed annoyance. "Hugh, young human, this is not like your small victory at Valoria Colony. The Nethrok have learned from that encounter. They will not be confused by simple unpredictability." Princess Zara stepped forward to defend Jake. "General, his strategy saved 20 million lives. Perhaps we should listen to what he has to say very well," Emperor Valdris said. "Jake Morrison, tell us your thoughts." Jake walked to the front of the room, feeling the eyes of every military commander focused on him. "General Korath is right. The Nethrak have adapted to basic unpredictability. But I don't think they understand the most important thing about humans." "Which is what?" General Korath asked. "We get stronger when things look impossible. Every time. Humans face extinction. We find ways to survive that we never knew we had." Dr. Martinez, who had been studying Nethrok technology for weeks, spoke up from her corner of the room. "Jake, I've been analyzing their computer systems. The Nethrok Collective operates on pure logic. They cannot process concepts like hope, sacrifice, or fighting when victory is mathematically impossible." "Exactly," Jake said. "So we need to do something so impossible that their computers can't even understand why we're trying it." Captain Garrett looked skeptical. "What do you have in mind?" Jake turned to face the holographic display. "We attack their entire fleet with everything we have. All ships, all weapons, no reserves, no retreat." The room erupted in protests. "That's suicide," General Korath declared. "We would be destroyed in minutes." "Not if we do it right," Jake insisted. "The Nethrak expect us to use defensive tactics to protect the planet. They'll position their fleet accordingly. But if we charge straight at them with our entire force, they'll have to recalculate their entire strategy." Princess Zara studied the tactical display. "What happens when they finish recalculating?" "That depends on how long it takes them," Jake replied, "and how much chaos we can create while they're thinking." Emperor Valdris was quiet for a long moment. "This plan has no chance of success. No logical chance," Jake agreed. "But humans don't fight logical wars. We fight human wars." "What does that mean?" General Korath demanded. Jake looked around the room at all the worried faces. "It means we're going to do something so crazy that even if we lose, the Nethrok will remember this battle for the rest of their existence. And maybe, just maybe, we'll find a way to win." Captain Chen, who had been listening quietly, suddenly smiled. "I like it. When do we start?" 3 hours later, Jake found himself on the bridge of the Star Runner again, with Princess Zara beside him. Through the windows, he could see the combined human and Valthani fleet forming up in what looked like the most suicidal formation in military history. Every ship was pointed directly at the center of the approaching Nethrok fleet. There were no flanking forces, no reserves, no backup plans. It was 847 ships against 5,000. No strategy except to fly straight at the enemy and see what happened. "All ships report ready," the communications officer announced. Jake picked up the fleet communication device. "This is Jake Morrison to all ships. In a few minutes, we're going to do something that every military manual in the galaxy says is impossible. We're going to charge a superior force head-on and somehow win." He paused, looking at Princess Zara, who nodded encouragingly. "I want everyone to understand something. The Nethrok have conquered thousands of worlds because they can predict what? Every logical species will do. They've never fought humans before. They don't understand that we do our best work when everything looks hopeless. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to fly straight at them as fast as our ships can go. We're going to shoot at everything that moves. We're going to keep fighting until either they're gone or we are. Princess Zara took the communicator. From him to all Valthani crews, remember that our ancestors fought these same enemies with courage and creativity. Today we fight beside the inheritors of chaos, and we will show the galaxy that the Star Children have not forgotten how to kindle hope in the darkness. The combined fleet began to accelerate toward the Nethrok formation. Jake watched the enemy ships on the tactical display, waiting to see how they would respond to an attack that made no tactical sense. For several minutes, the Nethrok fleet continued on its original course, as if the Allied attack was too illogical to acknowledge. Then suddenly their formation began to change. "They're recalculating," Princess Zara observed. "Look how their ships are moving. They're trying to form a defensive pattern, but they can't decide which one to use." Jake could see what she meant. The Nethrok ships were shifting between different formations, unable to settle on a strategy for dealing with an enemy that was committing all of its forces to what appeared to be a suicide charge. "All ships, maximum speed," Jake ordered. "Hit them before they figure out what we're doing." The Allied fleet struck the Nethrok formation like a hammer hitting glass. Human ships flew through gaps in the enemy lines, firing at everything in sight. Valthani vessels used their superior firepower to target the largest enemy ships. And in the middle of it all, Jake realized that something amazing was happening. The Nethrok were making mistakes. "Their coordination is breaking down," Princess Zara said excitedly. "Without a clear strategy to follow, their individual ships are acting independently." "That's exactly what we wanted," Jake replied. "Separate Nethrok ships are dangerous, but not invincible. It's only when they work together that they become unstoppable." The battle raged for hours. Ships from both sides were destroyed, but the chaos was working in favor of the Allies. Human unpredictability and Valthani determination proved to be a powerful combination. Then something unexpected happened. A group of young Valthani pilots began copying human tactics, flying their ships in patterns that made no logical sense but somehow worked. Other Valthani crews followed their example. Soon the entire Allied fleet was fighting with a creativity that surprised even Jake. "Look at them," Princess Zara said with wonder in her voice. "My people are remembering how to be unpredictable." Turning point came when Captain Chen led a desperate charge against the Nethrok command vessel. Her ship was heavily damaged, but she kept flying straight at the enemy, ignoring the weapons fire that was tearing her vessel apart. Just before impact, she transmitted a message to Jake. "Tell my kids I did something crazy for a good reason." Her ship struck the Nethrok command vessel, and both ships exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the entire battlefield. Without their central coordination, the remaining Nethrok ships began to retreat in confusion. "We won," Jake said in amazement. "We actually won." But the cost had been terrible. Half the Allied fleet was gone, including many good people who had believed in Jake's impossible plan. Princess Zara placed her hand on his shoulder. "Jake, you saved my world and my people. You taught us how to be strong again. We lost so many ships. So many people died because of my plan. They died fighting for something they believed in. That is the most human thing of all." 6 months later, Jake stood in the same palace garden where he had first walked with Princess Zara. The war was over. The surviving Nethrok had retreated to unknown space, their collective consciousness damaged by their encounter with concepts they could not process. Princess Zara approached him. But this time she was not wearing royal robes. She was dressed in the practical clothing of someone who had been learning human survival techniques. "How did your training go?" Jake asked. "Difficult and uncomfortable, exactly as it should be," she replied with a smile. "I spent 3 weeks learning how to survive in a desert with no technology and only basic supplies. It was terrible and wonderful, and I understand now why humans are so strong. You practice being uncomfortable so that when real trouble comes, you're ready for it." Jake nodded. "My people have a saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger." Princess Zara's smile was different now. It was still mysterious, But Jake finally understood what it meant. It meant that she had found her own spark, her own ability to grow stronger through challenge. Jake Morrison, she said formally, you'd be willing to help establish a new academy where young Valthani can learn human concepts of resilience and adaptive thinking? I would be honored, Jake replied.